I'm Natasha Straley, reading the stage direction.
I am Susan Finnerch, and I am reading the part of Joyce.
And I'm Michelle Cullum, and I will be reading the role of the mother Madeline.
The lights go down, Loretta Moore. The middle 1980s, an extravagant home in the suburbs outside of New York City. Act 1, Scene 1. The lights go down and the curtain slowly rises. When the lights are back up, we are at the lovely home of Joyce and Otis Withers. Joyce and her mother, Madeline Jones, are side by side on a handsome sofa having a conversation.
Noonie called yesterday evening. The children are fine, and so is Ralph. He got another stripe. I think she said that he's a master sergeant now.
I am so glad Noonie got herself together. I sure prayed hard enough for my child. You know, you went on and got a full scholarship to Radcliffe. Couldn't get much higher than going pretty much to the top private prestigious women's college in the country. And you really achieved.
Shaking her head, smiling.
Lord, child, when you first left home and went up there to Cambridge, Massachusetts, I thought I would lose my mind. I missed you so. Talk about praying. I stayed on my knees. And I used to sit sometimes on the stoop and would look up in the sky, hoping that you might send a sign to let me and your father know that you were okay. Yes, Joyce, you did well. You graduated with honors. Oh, you don't know how proud your father and me and your sister Noonie were. You went on and got that job at the United Nations right after you graduated, and then the Lord blessed you when you met and married a successful attorney like Otis. And then the Lord blessed you and Otis with little Otis and Jonathan, the two cutest little grandsons any grandmother would want. Not even talking about all the other things the Lord blessed you with. Look at all y'all have. You live in this huge house, and it's like a mansion, and you're out here in the suburbs with 3 luxury cars. You go to fancy places. Y'all even have squirrels around here. You know what I noticed? We don't have squirrels. Where I live, ain't no squirrels. We have rats. Big old, huge, scary rats. In poor neighborhoods, that's what you get. Y'all even got deer wandering around. Now, I don't feel comfortable with those deer. I think they might bite me.
Mama, deer don't bite.
They have teeth, don't they?
Back to what you were saying about all the things my family has, Mama. They're just things, material things, stuff. But they don't really matter. Middle class life is so boring. There are things I miss about the old neighborhood, the way it was when Noonie and I were growing up. Not the way things are now with crime, drugs, and all of that. You know something? I even miss Temple Baptist Church. At that church, I used to feel that life was unshakable and real. Otis and the boys and I go to a cathedral at St. Mark Episcopal. There's no movement inside of it, just quiet, as if it's listening to itself. The Holy Spirit was in Temple Baptist. Basically, I miss the softness I used to feel curl around my life as a child there. Here in this elevated community, everyone is so sophisticated, so elitist. Everyone is trying to outperform with private schools, activities, organizations, vacation homes, children's summer camps, and everything in class and refinement that I didn't mention. It's a proving ground where everyone is trying to grab the attention of others. None of us can truly stand one another, believe me. Mama, I never told you this, but I am not a happy young woman. I feel like I'm not doing the thing that could make my life fuller. I have yearnings to do something else with my life.
Child, what more could you want out of life? If you'd have had to work hard as I had to, and you still barely just keep things level, then maybe I could understand how you feel. But you and Otis and the boys have so much.
Mama, I want to be a writer. I want to leave my job at the UN and pursue writing as a career.
Joyce, have you talked this over with Otis? I always knew that. All of those times you were making up stories for everyone, and when you learned how to write, putting those stories down on paper, I knew how deep it was inside of you. I don't think I ever had something driving me such as that. I don't remember wanting to be anything except a good wife, a good mother, and I knew I'd have to work like a dog, a horse, and a mule to do it. If what you want is that deep inside of you, it's what you ought to be doing. I sometimes think that Noonie had her problem because she didn't follow her star. Noonie should have stayed in college and become a medical doctor. That was something she always wanted to be. But she met Ralph, and that was that. I'll always believe that was how her drinking problems got started.
Thank goodness that's behind her and her family and all of us. Uni really had us scared there for a couple of years. I remember the first time I realized that something was terribly wrong. It was the time that she left Ralph out there in the basin, Arizona. She and the two girls rode all the way from Phoenix by bus. And by the time they got there, Noonie told me that she had to be pulled out of her seat because she had sat so long. But Noonie was high as a flying kite. I know that because she came to visit me. She put the girls to bed and stayed up all night long watching television and drinking beer. She went through 2 6-packs Otis had gone out and bought at her request.
Then when your father passed, the problem got worse. That threw her back into it. 5 years ago, that was. I think we all knew then just how bad it was. We knew that Noonie couldn't beat it on her own. And I think that Ralph was beginning to want to give up on her, much as he loved her and those girls. He's a patient man, all right. At that point, Noonie realized she needed help also. That was 5 years ago. Putting her in that alcohol rehab center was the best thing we could have done. And as far as I know, she's been sober since. And that's been 5 years now. You know, Noonie reminds me of your father's sister, Ruby. Your Aunt Ruby had a bad drinking problem.
And Ruby was a stone alcoholic. I think she also had a serious problem with color. And she wasn't always drunk either, but I remember her saying things about being black, like being dark-skinned was a curse. Until I got older and smarter, I thought she spoke for our family. I was afraid that if I married a dark-skinned man, the family would alienate me. I think she influenced Noonie. Remember when we were teenagers and Noonie used bleaching cream on her face one night? In the middle of the night, she got up to use the bathroom and happened to look in the mirror. And what she saw scared the bejeebies out of her. She was screaming at the top of her lungs. All of us came running, and sure enough, she looked like a monster. Her face was so swollen.
My child didn't look human, did she? That child's face was so big and swole up that she looked like a sumo wrestler or Quasimodo. Ain't that man's name that they used to say was so ugly? Yeah, that was a lot for Noonie to overcome. But we all have to face some hard bumps traveling down the road of life. God has answered my prayers for so many things with my family.
We all carry some personal baggage on that trip through life. I know I have.
You know, we were talking about your Aunt Ruby and her light skin problem. As you know, your father's oldest sister married one of the reddest men you ever saw. They don't come brighter than your Uncle Richard without being white.
Aunt Ruby loved herself some Uncle Richard. Knowing something, when I was little, I used to think of those two as the most romantic couple I ever saw. They would travel all over the country. To me, they were so glamorous, worldly, so deeply in love, and they were always going places, doing things. They would whip in here from Detroit and whip out of here like they were on a magic carpet. I used to wish that I could be them.
No, baby. You wouldn't want to be your Aunt Ruby. Not for anything in the world. Your Aunt Ruby didn't have it so good. You know, when she passed away 2 years ago, when we went to Detroit to the funeral, your Uncle Richard revealed something about him and your Aunt Ruby. He sat in that lovely house of theirs in the living room, And he told me that the whole time he and Ruby were married, he'd been in love with another woman. And guess what? Young Ruby knew about it. She kept it private and put up with it. Richard broke down crying when he confessed all of this. And then he said this, Madeline, her name is Lucy. And she's a skinny little, real dark-skinned woman. And then he told me, I love Lucy. Always did and always will. I know it wasn't fair to Ruby what I did, but I love the woman. Just couldn't help myself.
Why did Aunt Ruby put up with this other woman?
Your Aunt Ruby didn't have any choice in the matter. She knew that if she made too much of it, Richard would have walked out, left her for the other woman, and fast. And your Aunt Ruby couldn't have lived without him. So she kept her mouth shut and did exactly what he expected her to do.